The housing bubble burst seems to be everywhere. You name it. The US, Europe, Australia, China. It has become a reality. Buying or even renting a house is becoming unaffordable even for the middle class. Governments, it seems, are struggling to keep up with the ever-inflating prices, leaving citizens feeling unheard and helpless. But did you know that there's someone who stands out? There's a city that enjoys the luxury of all affordable housing, and even when you see it, it feels like living in a different world. Here in Tokyo, the world's largest urban area, there are almost 40 million people, and you won't find problems of skyrocketing prices, homelessness, or angry apartment buyers protesting here, as we see in other capital cities. Even though Tokyo is larger than New York and its population is growing just as rapidly, it somehow manages to sidestep a devastating housing crisis. When we compare it to other bustling cities like London, Singapore, or Shanghai, the cost of rent and property in Tokyo is surprisingly low. Tokyo has even been hailed as the last big city with affordable housing. But how does it manage to ace that? Tokyo wasn't always the haven of affordable housing it is today. In the 1980s, a booming economy fueled a real estate frenzy. Skyscrapers shot up and land prices soared. Owning a home became a dream for many, as prices climbed to dizzying heights. But then the bubble eventually burst. In the early 1990s, the economy sputtered and the housing market crashed. Prices plummeted, leaving many homeowners underwater, owing more on their mortgages than their homes were worth. It was a tough time for many families, but Tokyo learned from its experience. It was famously said, if it hadn't been for the bubble, Tokyo would be in a situation similar to that of London or San Francisco. But how did Tokyo manage to do something that the Western governments failed to figure out? To find that out, you have to first understand the property dynamics of the city. And to make it simple, we will compare the property prices in Tokyo with that of other parts of the world. When we look at the 9 most economically significant cities globally, Tokyo emerges as the clear winner in terms of affordability. Whether we're talking about property prices or rental costs, Tokyo outshines all its counterparts such as London, New York, Shanghai, Beijing, and even Singapore. Surprisingly, this remains true despite the lower average wages in Chinese cities and Singapore's reputation for affordable housing. Now, you might be wondering, how does Tokyo manage to maintain such affordability? It's not just about Japan's population decline, as some might assume. While Japan's population has seen a slight decrease in the past 2 decades, Tokyo itself has been expanding. In fact, Tokyo has been adding as many people as London or New York. So, what's Tokyo's secret to staying so affordable? Tokyo builds a lot of houses. Over the past years, Tokyo's housing stock has nearly tripled, from 2.51 million homes in 1963 to 7.36 million in 2013. Some of you might say that that's not a big deal, and yes, you might be right, but many in the West have failed to do that. Justin Trudeau promised to build more than 40,000 homes, and President Biden has also touched on this topic several times. Yet, we've noticed that neither homes have been constructed nor housing markets have steadied. But Tokyo's urban planning has been top-notch. In Japan, 2 key factors shape its unique approach to urban planning and architecture. Firstly, it has the highest inheritance tax globally, and secondly, it experiences more earthquakes than any other country. These factors influence how real estate is perceived in Japan. Unlike in other places where homes are considered long-term investments, in Japan they're seen more like consumer goods. This is because of the higher risk of earthquake damage and the hefty inheritance tax, which discourages passing down properties. As a result, houses in Japan aren't built to last forever. Instead, they typically have a lifespan of about 30 years before being demolished and replaced. In Tokyo, only 1% of houses are older than 1951. The housing market continuously demolishes old buildings and constructs new ones, making them highly adaptable to changing demands. Neighborhoods undergo constant transformations, allowing for construction of larger buildings when demand increases, and downsizing if needed later. This flexibility is unique to Tokyo and is largely due to minimal regulation. Another notable aspect is the parking situation. To own a car in Japan, you must have a certificate of parking space. However, due to excellent public transportation and the ease of walking or biking, car ownership is less common. As a result, the need for parking space is lower compared to other cities. While there are minimum parking requirements, they are minimal, with only one space required per 200 square meters. Additionally, zoning regulations typically limit the types of housing allowed in an area, often permitting only single-family homes. This restriction often leads to the creation of sprawling suburbs lacking essential services. However, in Tokyo, such restrictions are practically non-existent. Japanese zoning laws promote mixed-use zones, allowing for diverse housing types within the same neighborhood. Buildings of varying shapes, heights, and sizes coexist, a practice uncommon in most parts of America or Europe. Furthermore, there are minimal regulations regarding neighborhood density, parking requirements, or architectural styles. This flexibility enables Tokyo to efficiently utilize space and construct a significant amount of housing in relatively compact areas. Unlike other cities, Tokyo prioritized long-term stability over short-term gains. Another key factor, a refreshing lack of the not-in-my-backyard mentality that plagues many Western developments. Residents understood the need for more housing, and the city responded by relaxing building restrictions. This allowed for more apartments and homes to be built, increasing supply and keeping prices from spiraling out of control. Now, of course, there are downsides to having lots of buildings close together. You don't get as many parks and green spaces, and Tokyo has fewer of them compared to other big cities. Plus, people have to deal with buildings always being built or torn down, and they don't have much say in what happens in their neighborhood. But the important thing is that by building a lot, Tokyo stays affordable for everyone. This shows us that we don't have to accept housing problems as unavoidable. We can fix them by just making more buildings. So why aren't other cities following Tokyo's example? Well, some things in Tokyo might not work elsewhere. For instance, Europe probably won't start knocking down old buildings to make room for new ones, but there are lots of methods from Japan that could help make housing cheaper in other places too. So why don't the West use these methods? It's not because it can't, it's because in most developed countries they don't want to. Why? Well, it's because they see houses differently. In Japan, houses are seen as temporary and they might not be worth much in 30 years, but in most other places, your home is super important. It can determine if you're rich or poor, your retirement plans, and even if you've made it in life. Another point to note is that homes in Tokyo tend to be smaller compared to other places, and people often spend more time outdoors. Hosting guests at home isn't very common. Instead, people prefer to meet up with friends outside. While this might not be widely discussed in books or articles, it's a noticeable aspect of living here. It's no wonder the city always seems lively and bustling. So housing isn't just about rules or how cities are designed. It's also about lifestyle, culture, and personal perspectives. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel for more updates. We will catch you in the next one.